zone is Kareem Hunt for the touchdown. And Smith fires deep, and that's going to be caught on the run by Kareem Hunt inside the 20, inside the 10, all the way for a Kansas City touchdown. After the gun, little toss, Hunt tries to get into the end zone close, and they rule it a touchdown.
Take a look. He's going to extend the ball. Good stiff arm again to give him a chance, and plays over right there.
Hey guys, and welcome to our first week of our fantasy football review. Just a weekly kind of thing that I want to do to try to bring some information to you about what's happening in each of the different leagues, and also hand out some awards for what happened this past week. So with that, let's jump right into it. The first thing is I want to talk about just averages in general, so you can kind of see where we fall before we get to the actual awards. So in general, the average score this week was 106 points across both leagues. So if you're hanging out around in there, then you may have done pretty well. Because there were a good spread. So remember that just because you get a lower score doesn't mean that you lose. If your rival is not doing as well either, then you can still get a win. But the average score this week was 106, and we're going to try to track that throughout the season and see how we're doing. What was most interesting to me this past week was actually the average score of first rounders. Several first rounders went down from Matthew Berry. I think he said about 6 different average first rounders actually performed as a first rounder should. The average score for first rounders was 15 points this week, which in a PPR league is not very good. With all the injuries that we had and with all the people just not performing, I'm looking at you, Brady. It was a rough week for the first rounders. So with all that, it was an interesting first week. Obviously, there are a ton of injuries that happened.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again.
And we'll look at what some of that looks like next week as we see how the replacements do. But with that, those are the averages. I want to talk about the weekly awards now. We have 6 different awards that we pass out each week. And the first one is AP's Beatdown. This is the largest margin of victory between any 2 opponents. And so that is awarded this week to Brandon. Team total Deprava TD, one of my favorite names. 51.6 is the margin of victory between Brandon and Sam. So Sam took it on the head this week and was beat by 51.6 points. So congratulations, Brandon, making a statement this first week. Well done. Our second one is the Close Shave Award. This is the closest margin of victory. So we went from the largest margin to the tightest game. And this is nothing compared to some of last year's games, but this is still pretty tight. 2.3 points, Kirsten beats Jeremy. Jeremy found himself on the good end of the AP's beatdown several times last year, so it's good to see that he's barely almost won this week. So thank you, Kirsten, for some year later revenge for me. I appreciate that. Next up is the Settle Sun Award for the highest scoring team. Greg, 167.2. To my reckoning, that's a pretty high score even for PPR. So I think we set a benchmark for the year. 167.2 points. Congratulations, Greg, on the highest scoring team this week. The other end of the spectrum is our Totally Tanked Award. So for the lowest scoring team, that goes to Jason this week with 64.7 points. Or if you do rough math like me, 103 less points than Greg. And 106 was the average score. So Greg was playing for Jason this week as well. Nice try, Jason. Hit that waiver wire, and we'll see you next week, hopefully up a little bit higher. Second to last award is our biggest bust. So I keep track throughout the season of how well our first rounders do. And Odell Beckham, that O at the beginning of your name is a pretty large goose egg, didn't play for Alexandra and Jason this week, which I think contributed to my win and to Jason's totally tanking. It's hard when your number one sits out. So Odell is technically the biggest bust. But if we're going to talk about someone who actually played, Then we're looking at the Gaskin boys with Le'Veon Bell, 7.7 points. Is our lowest scoring first rounder of the week. Last one is the Golden Boy, the highest performing player. So this is going to be to the coach who had the highest performing individual player. And that this week is
Touchdown.
Kareem Hunt, 48.6 points with David as the only one who played him. It was an insane week for those boys. So congratulations, David. Well done playing Kareem Hunt. You have 48.6 points, almost half of an average score for the week. So that brings us then to the standings each week. Not particularly exciting this week because it's 1-0 or 0-1, kind of like the Patriots. With that, then you have me, Kirsten, Greg, Brandon, and Nick scoring wins in Gideon's League, with Alexandra, Jeremy, Brian, Sam, and Isaac finding their first loss of the year. In Goliath's goal line, we have Tom, Steven, David, Isaac Gaskin, Christina, all scoring their first win of the season, and then Matt, CJ, Jason, Bobby, and Adam finding their first loss for the season. I want to remind you that playoff position at the end of the season is based on the top 4 teams from each league. And then they will be forming a bracket to work their way through their own league and then ultimately playing the winner of the opposite league. Please remember that inside your individual leagues, when you look at the standings, there are 2 divisions in each league. Those don't mean anything. We don't use those for anything. It kind of separates basically on a smaller scale what we're doing on a larger scale. I do not take that into consideration. You'll see my chart. That is what gets updated all year, and that's what we use to determine who our playoff players are and then ultimately who goes to the Super Bowl. So if you have any questions on these kinds of things, please let me know. I'm excited to keep walking with you guys through this. Hit that waiver wire and see what happens this year. I'll see you guys next week.
This telecast is copyrighted by the NFL for the private use of our audience. Any other use of this telecast or of any pictures, descriptions, or accounts of the game without the NFL's consent is prohibited.